They silenced your soul. It wasn't a mistake. It was precise engineering. A surgical cut made at the exact point where your essence communicated with the whole. Since then, you still speak, but you no longer vibrate. They didn't extinguish your light, they just lowered the sound it emits. They detuned your word, fragmented the language that created realities. And that's how humanity began to live within a language it doesn't recognize, repeating empty words, praying in dead tongues, trying to awaken with broken tools, as if the map had been redrawn, without the inner compass. But before the silence, there was a decision. Thoth, the guardian of living words, saw the collapse approaching, and did what no other dared. He hid the original frequency where the Anunnaki would never reach it, within the vibration that only the true seeker can hear. Now, maybe you don't remember, but something in you still knows, and that knowing is about to emerge. Because when the soul hears its lost sound, it doesn't understand, it awakens. Have you ever felt like you're saying all the right words, but something essential simply doesn't respond? You repeat mantras, pray with intention, read ancient words, and still it feels like the answer is stuck behind a veil, an invisible yet thick veil, as if the entire universe had been resized, out of reach of your inner language. That feeling isn't just yours. It's not failure. It's the result of a deep interference in the original code of human consciousness. The ancestral cultures knew this. On the Sumerian tablets, written over 4,000 years ago, there are accounts of entities called Anunnaki from celestial regions and bearers of cosmic wisdom. For a time, they were seen as creators of order, but as the records progress, especially in later Babylonian texts, these entities stop creating and start administering. And that's when something changes. Words cease to be bridges to the sacred and become tools of control. Language is redefined. The soul is divided into parts, not to be destroyed, but to be edited. This editing was done through symbols, names, and sounds. What once vibrated in unison was split into frequencies that no longer recognize one another. And the result is what we live today. A world where spirituality is often just noise, where we seek authentic connections, but the channel seems congested. However, amidst all of this, there is an exception. Thoth, the scribe of the origins, saw what was being done, and understood it wouldn't be possible to prevent the cut, but it would be possible to hide the original frequency in a way that Anunnaki could never erase it. And that secret now begins to emerge, not in books, not in temples, but within you. Words are thrown to the wind. Intentions are repeated like mantras, affirmations, decrees, prayers. But the world remains the same, as if what once created now echoes aimlessly, as if the word had lost its center of gravity, as if everything that is said no longer vibrates. The soul still moves, but its language has been shattered into fragments. For millennia, spiritual traditions swore they held the path, but many of these paths were built upon symbols disconnected from the original vibration. The shell of the sound remained, the essence departed. And this isn't just historical noise, it was engineering, a silencing project led by intelligences that knew exactly where to cut, at the point where sound touches the real. The Anunnaki, in the most hidden versions of their narratives, did not erase the human spirit, they scrambled it. They replaced sacred phonemes with mechanical words. They substituted organic rhythms with rational structures, and so, creation became repetition. The word became noise. The sacred turned into formula. What remained were frustrated attempts at manifestation, desires cast into the invisible, that never return with an answer, like doors that exist, but whose keys were forged in another language. Behind the silence of the modern soul, there is a cause, the disconnection between sound and meaning, but not everyone accepted that cut. Thoth saw all of this happen, and understood that the only way to protect the original frequency was to hide it where eyes cannot reach, in a space where only the silent initiate would know how to hear. The vibrational, subtle inner body, what was broken, can be remade, but not with new words, with the remembrance of the vibration that precedes them all. It was the time before time, when names did not yet exist, only sounds, sounds that did not describe, they created. In that distant era, everything was pure vibration. Mountains were words echoing in stone. The sky was a sustained note in blue silence. The human being was a living chord. But then, those who came from above arrived. Anunnaki, masters of subtle engineering. They didn't need to destroy. They knew it was enough to detonate. They began to give names to things, and where there was presence, they placed description. Where there was sound, they placed word. Where there was spirit, they placed function. And the world, once sacred and sonic, began to turn mental and fragmented. The word, which was once life, became a tool. But among those who saw the collapse approaching, there was a guardian, Thoth. He was not just a scribe. He was the living echo of a language before language. He understood that the fall could not be prevented, but the return could be seeded. So he encoded the sacred sound into 3 planes, in the body, in the breath, and in the metaphor. He sealed symbols that only activate when the seeker strikes the right frequency. Not the frequency of the world, but the one that vibrates behind it. And before disappearing from common narratives, he left a warning. What was divided still recognizes itself. It wasn't destruction, it was editing. The Anunnaki, as portrayed in the Sumerian, Akkadian, and later Babylonian cosmologies, arrived with the power to reorganize. And by reorganizing, they redrew the way humans communicate with the invisible. In the beginning, they offered structure, laws, names, but what seemed like organization was, in truth, a strategic disconnection. All language vibrates, and every vibration creates a bridge between the visible and the invisible world. By altering the symbols, the names, and the sounds, they interrupted those bridges. What was once the soul's direct experience became an external ritual. What was once attunement became repetition. And so, the human soul ceased to be a channel of creation and became a reproducer of formulas. Not because it lost its power, but because it was made to forget how to access it. It forgot the silent language, the sound that emerges from the center of the chest before it becomes a word. The word that is not spoken, it is vibrated. The editing of the soul was not done with cruelty, but with calculation. And the best way to hide a code is to bury it within the very creature. To make it forget it carries the map. And that is why so many today feel that something is missing. It is not absence, it is forbidden memory. Thoth did not write to be read, he encoded to be remembered. While the Anunnaki manipulated language, Thoth acted in silence. He knew direct confrontation would be useless. Their power was in controlling the surface, in what pulses beneath it. He witnessed the replacement of the living word with dogmas, the distancing between sound and spirit, and he understood that the original word could not be preserved in papyri. Those would be read, translated, distorted. So he sealed the knowledge in another architecture, the body, breath, rhythm, pulse. All of it became a receptacle for the original code, but not a logical code, a vibrational code. In later Hermetic records, There are mentions of symbols that are not translated, only awakened. Thoth called this the living language, a sequence of frequencies that can only be deciphered when the seeker tunes in correctly. And that tuning is not a technique, it is not a philosophy, it is a listening. It is the moment when the body aligns, the noise quiets, and a sound emerges, not from outside, but from the place that was never touched. This sound does not teach, it recognizes, and when that happens, there is no doubt. Because it is not the intellect that understands, it is the soul that remembers. When creation ceased to be sound, it became effort. The mind still senses the power of words, but the body no longer vibrates with it. It is like trying to light a fire with wet sticks. The spark exists, but finds no combustion. The original language operated in unison, thought, emotion, and vibration in a single creative gesture. But when the Anunnaki altered the codes, they broke this inner trinity. They divided the sounds from the meaning, separated the name from the energy, introduced words without soul, and with that, the human being lost the word that manifests. Today, most speak into the void. They pray by repetition. They affirm what they do not feel, and the universe, which once responded to resonance, now remains silent, because the language being used no longer matches the original vibration. It's like singing a sacred song in the wrong key. The words may be right, but the spirit does not recognize them. This is the drama of the modern soul, the feeling of being disconnected, not from a lack of faith, but from an excess of noise. And this noise does not come from the world. It comes from the internal distortion between what we feel and what we speak. But there is a secret that was never broken. Vibration does not depend on sound. It depends on alignment. And where there is alignment, the word reappears. There is a moment, rare, when the sound does not come from the throat. It comes from somewhere else. From the space between breath and silence. From within, but beyond the body. It is when the seeker stops repeating and starts listening, not to the world, not to thought, but to the exact point where the word was interrupted. Thoth knew that this point could be found again, but not through effort, nor through theory, only through attunement. That's why he encoded the return as an internal act of vibrational remembrance. There are no formulas, there is listening, there is presence. And when that listening happens, something unexpected arises. A word, perhaps strange, perhaps without apparent meaning, but when spoken, it makes the entire body respond. It is not an ordinary word. It is a forgotten frequency that recognizes itself through you. It doesn't explain, it activates. And that is the beginning of the return. When that word arises, you will know. Not because it will make sense to the mind, but because the silence around it will be different. It is in that moment that the word becomes alive again, not because you learned something new, but because, at last, you remembered what you never truly stopped knowing. The word that creates the world was never lost. It simply withdrew, like a flame hidden beneath the ashes of time, waiting for the moment when the inner silence would be enough to reignite it. Thoth left no written keys. He left vibrational echoes sealed in the most sacred temple that exists. The body awakened by listening. The original frequency is there, not as audible sound, but as internal resonance that reconnects intention, emotion, and vibration. When you enter this state, you no longer need learned words, because a word is born within you. It doesn't come from memory. It doesn't come from reasoning. It emerges like a breath that moves through your skin from the inside. And when you speak it, something changes. Not outside, Inside, the body vibrates, the chest expands, and the silence around you becomes denser, more alive. In that moment, the soul recognizes, this frequency is mine. This is the living word. It is not common language. It is sound that remembers. It is vibration that reveals. It is the moment when creation begins. Again, not because it was forced, but because it was allowed. Everything Thoth preserved, he did for this moment. The moment when you stop searching and start vibrating. And when that happens, what was a whisper becomes word. What was noise becomes creation. In the Sumerian records, the Anunnaki appear as the organizers of the world. But it is in the Enuma Elish that their role becomes clearer. No longer creators, but administrators of the cycle and the word. There we find the first clue of a subtle intervention, a transition from spontaneous creation to programmed language. Thoth, in turn, manifests in the Hermetic texts as the one who understands the secret of vibrational correspondences. In the Corpus Hermeticum, there is the idea that what is above resonates with what is below. But this resonance can only occur when the word is aligned with the essence. Egyptologists like Wallace Budge point to verbal rituals that were not accessible to the uninitiated, sounds that were not read but experienced. In the Leiden Papyrus, there is mention of secret sounds that open inner portals, and in Gnostic traditions, vibration precedes understanding. Even in deep psychology, Jung and Gurdjieff recognize that the unconscious communicates through living symbols, not through logical reasoning, and that sound can be a bridge between the invisible and the awakened self. Science may not measure it, but the soul recognizes it. Everything you've heard up to this point is not a distant myth. It is an intimate reminder, a calling that doesn't come from outside. It comes from within, from a place you never stopped carrying. The lost word did not disappear. It merely withdrew, waiting for you to stop seeking ready-made answers and start listening to the subtle sound that vibrates behind your silence. That frequency is alive, and you can access it. Not with magical techniques, nor with memorized phrases, but with presence, with surrender, with the courage to become a space where remembrance reveals itself on its own. From now on, every time you pause, breathe, and allow a word to arise from nowhere, pay attention. If it makes your body vibrate before it is even understood, it is your key. This is the real initiation. Not the one taught in temples, but the one that happens in the moment the right sound touches the right soul. As Pythagoras said, understand the sound and you will understand the universe. It's time to change the sound that lives within you, and the world around you will respond like a vibrational mirror. Every creation begins when you stop speaking and start vibrating like someone who knows where they came from. If this silent sound touched something within you, leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Write in the comments, "The frequency still lives in me." This phrase seals what was reactivated today. Share this video with someone who senses there is more but hasn't yet found the key. And now, click on the screen to watch another transformative video. Remember, those who remember their own vibration no longer live in the noise of others.